NATO defense ministers are meeting to discuss help to Ukraine, reinforcing the alliance's eastern flank. For more, we are now across to our correspondent at the NATO headquarters in Brussels, Rosie Birchard. Rosie, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Perhaps let's start with the very latest, with the Ukrainian President Zelensky delivering a virtual address to the US Congress, asking for tougher sanctions against Russia. Do you know what else he had to say, considering that this meeting now with NATO defense ministers is currently happening?
Absolutely. This meeting is underway as we speak. Defence ministers from all 30 members of the alliance are in this building, just not far from where I am. Now, this morning during the talks, they were joined exceptionally by some non-members of the alliance, ministers from Sweden, from Finland, from Georgia, but most notably, they were joined by video link by their Ukrainian counterpart. Now, we can imagine, although these talks are very much behind closed doors, that he was reiterating those demands or those requests that we heard from President Zelensky in public. And most notably, when it comes to NATO, what Ukraine has been asking for is a no-fly zone to be initiated over the country. Now, that's something NATO has said is essentially off the table. They fear that if they were to intervene in such a way, the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said the only way to do that would be to essentially shoot Russian planes out of the sky, and they think that would lead to a much bigger war with much greater human suffering, so an escalation of the conflict just at this moment when there are such hopes of, in fact, a de-escalation. So that's a taste of what's going on today in these talks. Later in the day, the 30 NATO allies will meet on their own without those extra additions to the meeting. They'll likely be discussing then how to strengthen their own alliance. So rather than support for Ukraine, how to protect each other as members of the alliance, because of course Ukraine is not a member, and that has been so fundamental to both that military build-up from Russia and then of course the invasion that followed and the conflict that has torn apart so many people's lives.
Other talks that are happening, delegation between Ukraine and Russia going to resume again soon. So another round of talks that we will be monitoring and watching very closely. Rosie, thank you so much for that update. Really appreciate it. She's coming to us live there from NATO headquarters.